I tell you what, I would let that woman lead me through any dark night. With that voice and those lungs, I'm sure we would be well provided. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I am free at last. Woo! You feel that with me? Let's say it together. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Woo! I feel those words in my bones. Because you know what? I know they're true. And I know it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow or after I pass away from this earthly existence. The reality is that you and I, my dear friends, we are created in total freedom because we are created in the image and the likeness of the Almighty, of God. No if, and, or but about it unless you choose through your own erroneous thinking to stand in the way of that reality. And I just propose to you today that it would be just a plumb beautiful day for you to wake up to that recognition and throw all that garbage that you've been holding on to regarding who you are and what you're here for and what you're doing. Just let it go, because something new is trying to rise up in you. It's the truth of your being. You are free right now in this moment. It's not a destination you have to arrive at, and there's nothing you have to do except lay down your defenses that are keeping you from being able to realize the exquisite nature in which God has created you. That's the end of the story. That's all you need to know. But the interesting part is, it sure doesn't seem that way at times, does it? It's like, whoa, major inconsistency. I mean, I know that we all believe that because it's like it's in the center of our being. We know that it's the truth, spiritual reality. But why, when we see it enacted out on the screen of our lives and our daily dramas, does it seem so out of accord with that? And that's why this morning I want to talk to you about the unity teachings and about how unity has evolved and about the 5 essential elements or fundamental principles of the unity movement today. Because everything that unity is about is like a spiritual toolkit. Somebody referred to it just yesterday, a spiritual toolkit that you can go into and you can find the tools that will help you just to remember who you are, to become conscious again, and to stop living in this insane world of time and space and wake up to your reality and spirit. One of the things that I love about the unity teaching and the unity way of life, and I love this, but not everybody, even in unity, loves this about unity, and that is that we didn't have 2 people, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, back in the 1800s, who founded this thing called unity. We didn't have 2 people arriving on the scene who said, all right, I have received a divine revelation from the Almighty, and in my superior stature here, I'm going to impart it benevolently on behalf of all humanity. So all of you lower Piscean type beings, keep your ears open, because if you follow me, I will illumine you. They never did that. And I had the honor of working with 3 different generations of the Fillmore family. And I can tell you, these people lived in integrity with the understanding that Charles and Myrtle had originally when they came up with the unity idea. And that was they were totally ordinary human beings, just like you and me. They refused to allow anybody to set them up on some kind of pedestal or to separate them in any way as religious authorities. They were just 2 people trying to live their lives. And what do you know? They got a hold of some teachings that started changing their lives dramatically. Myrtle experienced a physical healing, and Charles began to open himself to the great persuasions of religion all throughout the world. And they ended up with this thing called unity. But they always made a point, as did their succeeding generations. They made a point out of recognizing that it was never about them. And I believe Jesus did the same thing. Even though many of us today have made it all about Jesus, the reality is that Jesus told us in the scripture that we are using today that each one of us could do everything he did and more. So he wasn't claiming any kind of religious superiority here. You know, and I want you to hear that. You have the same Christ presence and Christ power in you as Jesus Christ did some 2,000 years ago. And you can do everything that was accomplished through his life and through his ministry and more. And there's no religious superiority about it. We want to break down those old images because many of them were built around fear, designed to get people to listen out of guilt and obligation. You know, well, I don't know what's going on here, but he or she seems to know, mostly he's, for better or worse, that we're in positions of religious superiority. So we better follow him because goodness knows we don't want to end up going to hell. And it's like, you know, we're over that kind of thinking, my friends. We don't need to operate out of a fear-based mentality that we better do something because somebody tells us to or there's going to be some kind of price to pay or punishment to be had. That is old thinking, and we're ready for some new thinking. So the beautiful thing about unity is that it came up out of two very ordinary people. This divine, exquisite nature came up and out of them, and they created this movement. And they never said that they had it all together, and they never said that it was carved in stone. They encouraged, in fact, people like you and me to continue to evolve their teaching. Charles Fillmore said repeatedly, I reserve the right to change my mind. I'm growing, I'm expanding. And every time I grow and expand, my understanding of spiritual reality grows and expands as well. And each one of us has the same license to do that. So it's interesting to observe that over the different generations of the Fillmore family, we have found this teaching evolving. Beginning with Charles and Myrtle initially, and actually a lot of people don't realize this, but they really were operating on a theory. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore had a theory, and the theory was that the life and the teaching and the ministry of Jesus Christ was actually all symbolic of an activity that takes place inside of us as we begin to awaken spiritually. From the moment that the Christ was born in the Christmas story, we find the symbology alive. In that situation, it's the beginning or the birth of this new understanding of ourselves as being so extraordinary and so much more than we thought we ever were. A lot of people have that experience when they first walk into a Unity church because typically religion has actually oppressed them and repressed them to the point where they've never been able to honor and rejoice in who they are. So people walk in here and they say, wow, you know, I think he just said that I was a spiritual genius and that I was a child of God. And I never heard that one before. And it's like, yeah, that's what we told you. So that's the beginning, that's the birth of the Christ awareness or Christ consciousness inside of you. Wow, I'm not what I thought I was. The moment that that Christ consciousness begins to awaken, becomes back into your conscious awareness, then, according to Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the 12 disciples begin to become quickened within you. Each of those 12 disciples representing a different center of energy and a different quality, like love, like wisdom, like zeal, like power. And this Christ presence orchestrates, this Christ awareness begins to orchestrate all of these energy centers in the body, and you begin to place your attention on them, and you start to awaken to move from this mortal being into this immortal being. So that was the original teaching, was called the 12 Powers of Man. Charles Fillmore designed it, and that's how Unity started, with this teaching. Now along comes the next generation, the eldest son of Charles and Myrtle, Lowell Fillmore. And he's leading the work, he's leading the Unity message and as a spiritual leader in the 1950s into the 1960s. And he's very taken by the trend of the time, which was this: the power of positive thinking. The Norman Vincent Peale-ish era, where everybody was thinking, wow, you know, I just noticed if I start thinking positive thoughts, things just seem to go better. What do you know? So we started getting a hold of the power of the mind and the power of our thoughts, and we became extraordinarily popular, Unity did, during those years, because people wanted to hear that. You see, it was always the same and remains the same essential spiritual truth, but it gets interpreted in different ways depending on the spiritual evolution of the audience that's hearing it, and also depending on the times that we are living in. So it became the work of the power of positive thinking was what Unity was all about. Then we went into the next generation, specifically Charles R. Fillmore, who was the grandson of the founders, and he led the work through the late 1960s and into the 1970s and the early 1980s. And his whole thing was that Unity is more than both of these ideas. It's more than a theory, and it's more than positive thinking. It's actually a way of life. It's a way of being. And he had a specific interest, inclination in the psychological world. And so he began tying the teaching together with psychological revelations of the time, because psychology was getting very big. It's very hot at that point. People were starting to wake up to that dimension of reality. So the teaching began to evolve into that. It's a way of life. It's a way of being. It's a way of seeing things. And then finally, the last in the generations of Fillmores to lead the Unity work was Connie Fillmore, an amazing woman that I had the honor and privilege of working with for a decade when I was employed at our world headquarters in Unity Village. And Connie came along and she said, you know, I'm going to try to frame this in a still more comprehensive way and in a more universal way. And she came up with what we refer to as the 5 principles. And these 5 principles are discussed in this easy-read book by Unity minister Ellen Davenport. She talks about each one of them in more detail than I'm going to be able to share with you this morning. But I refer you to this book available at the Source Bookstore because a lot of times people get in Unity and they have great difficulty explaining to other people what this thing is all about. Somebody says, Unity, what's that? And it's like, well, where do I begin? You know, well, you can begin with the 5 basic principles, and that's what we're going to do this morning. And I thank Connie for coming up with these. They're the next evolution of the presentation of the Unity message. The first one, let me just ask this, because I do this little series every year, because I'm always astounded at people who have been in Unity 10, 20, 30 years, and they still can't tell you what these 5 basic principles are. So, I think, well, it's good to have a review. And it's good for me, too, because every time I talk about them, my understanding has expanded, and it's different. So it supports me, and it reveals deeper meaning to me as well. But let me just ask you, does anybody know what the number 1 basic Unity principle is? Actually, you know, this might be working that I do this every year, because that is the largest response I've ever had to that question. So give yourself a round of applause. You got it. Usually it's just like dead silence. Number 1, Unity principle. All right, 1 presence and 1 power. And I'm going to state these in the words that Connie originally stated them in when she wrote them. You'll find different variations. There's one in your bulletin this morning for the month of January, since our truth principle is living the truth principle, since our value is living the truth principles. So there are different versions, but in her original version, it's this. God is absolute good everywhere present. Okay? God is absolute good everywhere present. Well, that's lovely, but come on. Did you watch the news last night? You call that good? You call that God? No, we don't. Because when we talk about God being absolute good, the word absolute is critical. What we're talking about is that in the absolute realm, in the absolute reality of spiritual truth, there is only 1 presence, there is only 1 power, and it's God and it's good. Our experience of that reality, however, is affected tremendously by the thoughts that we think, by the filters through which we view life. So we look out and most definitely we see in this relative round world experience, we see right and wrong and good and bad, and they definitely contrast each other, don't they? We look at that, but we realize that in the absolute sense that is behind this compelling illusion that we're staring at and that we seem to be a part of, there is a light, and that light represents the absolute goodness of God. As an example, I asked you, how many people in this room have gone through an experience of sort of a living hell, for lack of a better way of putting it, only to find out that when they got through that experience of hell, some greater reward, some greater way of being evolved? How many people have seen a nightmare turn into something beneficial, see? And that's because even beyond the compelling appearance of negativity or evil, there is something at work in the absolute realm that is working to bring forth the highest good for all concerned. We believe that in Unity. And I'll tell you what, if you get that 1 essential first principle, you've got it all. If you can really believe that, if you can really understand it, if you can really get it down into your heart and know that it's the truth, that you are a part of 1 presence and 1 power. And I'm already sneaking into the second basic principle, which is this. Human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ Spirit within. Their very essence is of God, and therefore they are also inherently good. And I take issue with Connie on that one. I always have, because she says there's a spark of divinity within me. I refuse to accept that. I believe there is a veritable bonfire of divinity within me. I am absolutely alive with divinity. That's all there is. It's far more than a spark. You see, initially it looks like it's just a little spark. That's only because that's all you can see. But as the veil becomes rent, as you begin to see clearly the spiritual truth of who you are, it ain't no spark. It's a lot more than a spark. You're alive with divinity because you're alive with God. And so am I. And so is everybody walking around on this planet. We're just suffering from a massive, major hypnotic delusion that we are finally waking up from. We're finally waking up. We have these great tools. You know, I love these teachings. I love these teachings. I thank you, Mom, for letting me grow up in this movement. Because I'll tell you what, I see these as absolute pearls. They're gems, my friends. I'm so grateful for them. And every time I take them up and look at them, the light shines on them differently, and I see them differently, and I appreciate them more. Right now, you're sitting in this room. You should pat yourself on the back. What the hell? You should kiss yourself for having gotten yourself in here, because this teaching is so amazing. It's so amazing. And it will never let you down. It will never let you down. We are so blessed. I'm giving you gems right now. I'm not giving them to you. The Spirit of God is. You're giving them to yourself. But they're just amazing. So, where was I? So, we are inherently good. You see, the second principle stands in light of the first one. If there's only one presence and there's only one power, how could it be that we're not part of it? You see? Because that's all there is. So, of course, we're part of it. And we want to see this initial spark turn into the bonfire because we're here to light up the world. The third basic unity principle: human beings create their experiences by the activity of their thinking. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. We create our experiences. Now, this does not say that we create our reality. And that's important. We create our experience of reality through our thinking. Our reality is that we are dwelling forever in the kingdom of God, like it or not. Our experience of that reality can be quite different because we allow the thoughts that we think to form the filters through which we perceive reality, through which we have our daily experiences. So it's in the realm of thought that our work is done, you see, in unity. So I was talking about last week, we go in there and we just observe the thoughts. We don't judge them. We just say, what thoughts are serving me? What thoughts are supporting me in feeling good about myself, in feeling good about life, in feeling good about God, and what thoughts are not supporting that? And we go in and begin a selective process of letting go of the thoughts that don't serve us, that don't support us. And we maintain and we nurture those thoughts that do support us. Now, the other piece of this is that everything in the manifest realm has its beginning in thought. And that's very true. You know, somebody had to think of the chair that you're sitting in before you could sit in it. You know, somebody had to think of this auditorium, this stage. Somebody had to think of that piano. Everything began with an idea. And we know that the most prosperous and blessed people on the planet are the ones that are thinking of new ideas. Because always it's new ideas that push human evolution forward. And it's new ideas that bless us. And new ideas are always available to us. That's why you may think that you're in some kind of recession right now, my friends, but give me a break. That is a totally relative experience in the round world. The truth is that you're in a field of infinite ideas. And if you open up your mind, those ideas will start to pour through you, and those ideas can then be taken and put into material expression, and you will be prospered because you will be bringing those ideas forth to yourself and to the human family. So there's no end to this. The ideas, the thoughts are all out there. All you have to do is open your mind to them and start to create out of them. And that's how we make a better world for everybody. The fourth basic unity teaching is prayer is creative thinking that heightens the connection with God mind and therefore brings forth wisdom, healing, prosperity, and everything good. Now, this may not be the kind of prayer that you have thought of in the past. There are different kinds of prayer, and I think they're all valuable. I categorize them. The first prayer for me is what I call the prayer of despair. And it's the one where you go, oh my God, please help me. I don't know what I've done with my life, and I don't know how I'm going to be any better, and I just need some kind of intervention. Please come heal me, help me, just fix my miserable mess of a life. That's the prayer of despair. And hey, we've all prayed them. We're laughing, but honey, I've prayed them, you know. There have been times where just, dear God, help me. That's a prayer of despair, but it works. The other kind of prayer is the prayer for repair. And this is where we go out into the world and say, oh my goodness, bless his heart. Lord, you really need to come fix this one because we got a pickle here. We got to do something. We got to fix this person because they are badly broken. You know, whenever you're praying that kind of prayer, the best thing to do is look at who's really broken. You know, if you're seeing broken all over out here, you better start, you know, taking a look at yourself because it's your own idea that you're holding regarding yourself. It isn't true, but nonetheless, there it is. And then, beyond the prayer of despair and the prayer for repair is the prayer to be aware. And that's the one we're talking about here. The prayer to be aware is where we presence ourselves in a conscious awareness of God as the one presence and the one power. And then we simply ask that our thinking be raised to fall in total alignment with the divine. It's an experience what I call align with the divine. We align with the divine. We ask the activity of God as the Holy Spirit to lift our thinking up to this refined, amazing level where we're in alignment with spiritual reality. And when your thinking is in alignment with spiritual reality, then your experience of day-to-day living will reflect that because your thoughts become things. As we often say, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So this is the idea of prayer being the most accelerated form of thinking, where our thoughts, we just say, lift up my thoughts, lift up my mind, lift up my consciousness, lift up my heart, because I want to experience, I want to express, and I want to experience the highest, most refined, most spiritually aware existence that I can. And when you do that, you'll be amazed at what begins to happen. You do have to be willing to let go of your firmly tight grip on all these erroneous ideas, these false ideas that you have believed were so true. And then there's the fifth unity principle. This is the one that we all have the love-hate relationship with. We love it and we hate it at the same time. It's this: knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. Would that I could just depend on the words, because they're so pretty. I'm God's perfect child, and so are you. Oh, gosh, it's just lovely, isn't it? Just beautiful, you know? We're all just radiant beings, and yeah, you know, I just think the right thoughts, and I have this lovely little experience called life, and everything. So sweet. It just sounds so sweet. But here's the pill. You've got to live it. You've got to live it. And when that you-know-what comes up to you, and you just want to be defensive, and you just want to say, hey, buddy, who the hell do you think you are? And you have no right doing this, and you know, you're out of accord here, and there is no Christ presence in you. You're just totally messed up. You know, when you're in that space, when, hey, what is happening? My whole world is falling apart. What's going on here? Who set this up? What am I a victim of? You know, I feel betrayed. I feel resentful. I'm angry, and I have every good reason to be angry. We've all been there, and we'll probably be there again. But the point is, that's when you have to stop and say it's not enough just to know this stuff. We've got to live it. And my friends, if we're not willing to live it, where are you going to find anybody that will? I mean, here we are, and we at least get it. So can we live it? Can we bring it into full Technicolor 3D life experience every day? Can we commit to that? And the answer is yes, we can. Yes, we can. We got everything we need to pull this off. And you know, the only alternative is to keep on living in pain and suffering. Do you want to go on with that? You might as well give this a try. You know, how can it hurt? How can letting go of your resentment and your anger and your feelings of injustice, how can that really hurt? In John, this is the 8th chapter, 32nd verse, we read, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. There's another way to put that, you know, and I can't really say it in church on Sunday morning. It says, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free, but first, you'll get real PO'd. Simply because you won't want to have to say, wow, this is my issue, not his, not hers. You know, the truth will always draw you into yourself, and that's not a lot of fun sometimes. But here's the thing. The way that knowing the truth sets you free is when you find the guts to live it. And you see, we've all been entombed, really entombed by our own limited thinking and our lousy thoughts that we hold about ourselves, other people in the world. we can cut through that, but we've got to live it. Every time you find the courage and every time you are consistent and committed to living the truth that you know, you'll start to get a little bit freer and a little bit freer and a little bit freer. And you'll start to realize that you are in truth an unfettered spirit. Nothing can tie you down. Nothing. Nothing in the world of time and space. Your spirit, you're God-made. You're as good as it gets. So let that be your understanding when you're in difficult situations in life. Practice the truth, live the truth, and be the truth. And what you'll find is that you'll start to experience this exhilarating liberation. You'll start to live in the manner in which God intended you to live. And that is one hoot and a holler, my friends. It is so much fun to be alive when you know the truth and you live the truth. And you start to align your mind with the divine and bring that forth into your everyday living reality. Now, we got a problem this morning, my friends. There are no more Fillmores left in positions of leadership in the Unity movement. Connie was the last one. So what to do, what to do, what to do? Now is the time when the lineage of leadership on the outside is gone away for you and I to wake up to the reality that we are the leaders of the future of this movement, each and every one of us. And we will lead by deciding for ourselves what the next step in our own spiritual evolution is. How this magnificent teaching and spiritual reality needs to be translated in today's world for us right now and in the days to come. You have to accept responsibility to become your own spiritual authority and your own religious authority. And you have to say, I will not be looking to anybody or anything outside of me for instruction or for guidance anymore because I've got it right here inside of me right now. I can stand on the credit of my own religious superiority with myself, not with anybody else. And don't let anybody else tell you how to live or how to be. It's in your heart. It's written in your DNA. Just start paying attention to it because it is in that manner that we all become authentic spiritual beings and bring it forth into the world. And that is the manner in which we're intended to live. I swear to you, now is the moment for us to do that. And I invite you to join me this morning in committing to letting go of the old, embracing the new, and stepping into freedom beyond anything you've ever imagined. God bless you.